So this evening, Books and Books is very pleased to welcome back Mr. William C. Gordon, presenting his new book, Unfinished. Mr. Gordon has had a long, successful career as a San Francisco trial lawyer. He is also the author of 5 previous noir mysteries that have appeared in 10 languages. This is the 6th in a series of mysteries featuring newspaper reporter Samuel Hamilton. Unfinished confronts the question, how much hurt can be repaired when betrayal, kidnapping, and violence touch a person's life? But rather than have me give away any of his plot, please give a very warm welcome to Mr. William C. Gordon.
Thank you very much, Victor. Well, I'm here to present my book called Unfinished, and this book has a long history. I don't like to read from my books because I'm not very good at it, and so I'm not going to do that. I'm going to tell you a story. Many years ago, when I decided I was going to be a writer at the age of 60, I wrote a 700-page novel that was sort of a coming-of-age novel. And in it, there was a lawyer who used to wear silk suits and Gucci loafers. And everybody began accusing me of portraying myself in the book as the lawyer. But the truth of the matter is that I was so poor when I was a lawyer, especially at that stage of my career, that I used to have to hitchhike to court, and I had holes in my pockets, so I couldn't even hold money. So I wasn't the lawyer that was portrayed in the book. And this book, by the way, was never published. It was called Flawed, and many of my friends came up to me afterwards if they had read the manuscript and said that I had chosen an appropriate title for a book about my life. And so what happened was that I had a love story in there about a girl called Emma. And I also had and it was a wonderful story. I liked it better than any of the other stories in the book. And I also had an oversexed dwarf in this book, also liked very much. And my then wife told me that I could not publish the book because the dwarf was disgusting and there wasn't one woman in the world who would want to sleep with this guy. And so I went on to other things, and she said, why don't you write mysteries, because you will have much more luck with that because you know about the law, because you're a lawyer, and you also have studied forensic, so you can talk about these things that mystery writers talk about. So I had a short story that was called All You Can Eat, and I took that short story and I put it as chapter 1 of the Chinese Jars. And I wrote the book, and it's been pretty successful, actually. And I just learned yesterday that the city of San Francisco is going to make it its book for all its readers in the city in April of next year, so that everybody who reads mysteries theoretically will read my mystery, The Chinese Jars, then, and then I'll give a talk, sort of like what I'm doing now. Then, so I began to write these books, and I started taking the stories that I had in my unpublished book. I started taking them out of there and creating books of them, and a lot of them had to do with Mexican workers who were injured and not compensated properly by the system, and basically marginal characters who needed redress and needed someone to talk for them. And as my mother told me many, many years ago, you have to speak for the people who can't speak for themselves. So I've always tried to do that, and my books always talk about the marginal people. And then after I wrote about the Mexican workers being accused falsely of murder in the second book called The King of the Bottom, I got back to the dwarf, and I couldn't let the dwarf go because, and I didn't know why then, but I finally decided that the dwarf reminded me of my father, who was emotionally a dwarf, and he was a womanizer and a drunk and everything else, and he started a religion of his own called the Infinite Plan, and so I had the dwarf start the religion and the mission and cater to the Mexicans, and my father had an assistant who was basically his lover. She was a Mexican woman, and I hated her. So I made her a dominatrix and a prostitute, and she was the dwarf's favorite person, and I portrayed her as being much taller than him and doing all kinds of wild, crazy things. And when the book was finished and published, I haven't told you one thing, that I also had a character who reminded me of the dwarf, and he's here tonight if you'd like to meet him. Horacio, would you just stand up for just a minute? Yeah, because I need for the people to see what a dwarf you are.
But I'm not a perverted.
No, he's perverted, believe me. You can trust me. I know. So anyway, when I finished the book and people started reading it, they would say, God, what a wonderful character this dominatrix is. I say, no, you can't do that. She's all these things that I've described in the book. And they say, no, it's the most interesting character that I've ever read in any of your works. So I thought, wow, that's really something. You never know for whom you write. And you also never know the strength of the character that comes out when you're portraying them. So anyway, that happened. And finally, I wrote 2 other books, one about corruption in San Francisco politics, and one about an Arab and a Jew who are very, very important in a novel that I wrote called Fractured Lives. And they're basically stories, one of that I invented and the other that I actually took from a Hungarian Jew who had been at the age of 6 living in the basements of buildings in Hungary, in Budapest, because his mother and father were both taken to concentration camps. So I got both sides of these stories, and I wrote it, and I actually enjoyed the book very much. Then I wrote a book about corruption in San Francisco's court system, which I also stand by, even though other people don't. And then I got back to my love story that I wanted to write, and my wife told me that love story was not strong enough to withstand a novel, so that I need to have some crimes in there. So I said, okay, so I put some crimes in there, and then I wrote this story. And in the process of writing this story, I discovered really that I was talking about losses, and it wasn't a love story at all. And I was really talking about losses in my own life disguised by fiction. So I got, and it was a very hard book for me to write. But I wrote that book, and so that's done. And now I'm doing short stories. But instead of reading you passages from Unfinished, there's a lot of sex in there, and there's a lot of crime, and there's very good police work, and my character, Samuel, does a very good job of resolving the crimes. Rather than go on and on about me, I'd rather just answer some questions that any of you have, and be glad to take whatever time we need. See? Well, don't all jump up at once. Sonia, you can ask me a question.
I want to know about the book because I didn't read the book. I don't think so. The one that you say that there are different stories. I want to know about that book.
Oh.
Unfinished?
Well, no. That's my first book was called Flawed, but that's never been published. But I have many stories that I've taken from that and are in my books. So you almost get all the stories. There's only about 3 or 4 that I haven't talked about in these other books. So you're getting me. Yeah.
I remember when I was your slave partner.
Yeah.
That
You were my slave.
yes, I was. That we got a bar, Melba, in the Mission District. It was in Folsom Street or Van Ness.
It was on Cap Street.
Okay. And then in the first, I have read all your books. In the first, Dwell in Chinatown, you put that in Chinatown, Melba.
Yeah.
Here's a question. The daughter, is a novel person, a character, or she does exist?
Well, Melba has a daughter, but the daughter that I paint as a protagonist in the book is nothing like Melba's daughter. I need to explain this. That Melba, I owned a bar with Melba for 25 years, and she's exactly the way I describe her in all the books that I've written. I didn't have to change one hair on her head. She was just the way she was. She was hard drinking, cigarette smoking, very wise person, and she just told you what she thought, and she was very well connected. So she knew a lot about San Francisco. She knew a lot about San Francisco politics, and I just moved her from the Mission Street to Nob Hill just to give her a little class. So thank you for reminding me of that. Yeah. Melba, she was a real person. She's dead now. No, she died. Yeah. Anybody else? Yeah.
Brochure about yourself and the advertisement.
Yeah.
You had a hat on.
Yeah.
I noticed tonight, big same hat.
Yeah.
Was there a reason? Is that because you don't want to show your head or
No.
something symbolic or what?
Well, I don't have any hair.
Oh, is that the reason why?
No, actually, the reason that I wear a hat is
It seems
because,
to be a trademark or something.
well, that's what it's turned out to be, but I'm very much allergic to the sun. And I've had several bouts with skin cancer, so that's how I protect myself.
Good idea.
Yeah, but that's really why. But actually, I used to wear Australian hats, but now I got into this Borsalino thing because it's what the detectives used to wear in the 50s, and so my novels are all based on the 60s. So that's what I do. Yeah. That's why. That's.
The reason why you quit sailing by boat.
Yeah. Well. No, because you driving your boat. That's why I don't sail on it.
I got bad news for you. That was flu when you're 97.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Customs. Questions.
Do you remember any peculiar or singular questions, difference between countries, journalists, readers? Imagine which one is the most peculiar question that someone.
Actually, you'd be surprised how similar. He wants to know if the questions from different countries are the same. Actually, they're pretty much the same, especially people who are really versed in crime novels. You know, I'm one of the old school crime writers. I've read all those old masters, so I know a lot about the law, and I know a lot about the forensics of it. So I'm not surprised by any of the questions that they ask me, and some of them are pretty technical, and they're very good, and especially in Spain and in South America, you have some real devotees about crime novels, and I don't know if you know this or not, but 70% of the people who read crime novels are women. So they always want to know about very peculiar details. And but that's a good question, though. Yeah, it's pretty universal. The questions are all the same. Yeah. That's it. Well, I don't know what to say. Anyone else? Going. Thanks for coming. Yeah.
All right, folks, then if there are no more questions or notes to our internet audience watching at home, still plenty of time for you to call the number on the screen, and we could ship a copy of Unfinished to wherever you are in the U.S. free of charge. For those of you here in the house, we have the book for sale at the counter in the front room over there, as well as all of Mr. Gordon's previous titles in this series. He's going to be signing here at the table to the left of the podium, so please give another hand to Mr. William C. Gordon. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you.